According to claims, we can change the future. That is through time travel. This is by T.S. Caladin. We can change the future, he says. Billions of people on Earth were mesmerized when the Associated Press finally released the first photos from the much talked about The World Monitor. The public was informed by multimedias on May 1st, 2015 that pictures had been received from outer space and had been analyzed for more than a year. Rumors or data leaks provided tantalizing possibilities in the minds of people everywhere. Everyone seemed anxious to view the strange images. The World Monitor made global news when it was announced that Swiss scientists Heitz and Rubinoff developed a, quote, fantastic breakthrough, unquote, in the realm of search for life in the universe. Only recently was TWM's existence shown to the public located first floor of Brookline Labs on Long Island, New York. Many thought the mechanism was badly named since it was initially thought to invade personal privacies. The monitor did not have the capability to microscopically view us, only, quote, telescopically receive pictures of what was far out in space, end quote. As radio telescopes and large arrays of dishes listened for signals from intelligent beings in the universe, the monitor had the ability to see, quote unquote, and receive transmissions on the order of television. No films or repeated images in series were found, but 4 shocking stills were plainly collected and examined. Now everyone observed the best signs of life, light years and light weeks from our world that the general public was told were real and genuine. Out of millions of blurred images with various resolutions, theorized to vary because of different distances, only 4 spectacular ones were displayed and nicknamed: the biplane, the monster, the tree cave, and the kiss. The first lucid image was what appeared to be a biplane that cut a path possibly along a grassy runway. At first, Heitz and Rubinoff believed TWM picked up signals from Earth due to some form of reflective bounce back, but as more data came in, a clear picture definitely originated from a distance of 8 light years away, they said. The size of what seemed like a flying craft on a type of a ground was unknown. Was this a small toy or a drone or very massive in scale? The shape of the biplane made sense except for 2 rudders or vertical stabilizers. Further study found that they were basically radio antennas that probably powered the craft, which supported the toy or drone possibility. The sharp image of what was labeled the monster was thought to be because of the closeness of the transmitted still frame. The Swiss scientists unbelievably claimed the monster was located only 500 million miles away, which put it within our solar system. Extensive international tests proved that the image was not computer-generated. Astronomers theorized that we could have a real picture from either Jupiter's moon Europa or Callisto. And the third photograph, the tree cave, from the monitor of Brookline Labs appeared very ordinary. Once again, federal researchers thought that they might have somehow received an image from our own planet. When the World Monitor calculated the distance from the frozen prophecy, astrophysicists reported that the tree cave was only 6 light years away, and from the almost opposite direction of space in the biplane signal. The alien aspect to the image was that the darkness around the trees was proven to be a cave with a defined opening to the cave. Also, a hint of a second white sun was found when the picture was enlarged. The fourth and final picture was said to come from the farthest origins in the direction of the Pleiades, nearly 500 light years away. The kiss, quote-unquote, was considered the most controversial of all because the image appeared as if 2 women were in an embrace. Many people thought it was not a kiss at all. There were even a few that suggested this might be an alien with 2 heads. After analysis by every technology imaginable from many countries, the results were that one head had hair which covered her ears and the other had extremely long ears. On YouTube, various conspiracy theories had guessed the truth and posted radical views, not aired. that the false flag images were 100% fake. The World Monitor images showing the to the public aired World Monitor project were bogus, totally fabricated lies, and no such space TV mechanisms were known to exist. The public show was merely deception to gain huge funding for the highly secret and very real project, which was the time wave machine positioned under Brookline National Laboratories, Long Island, New York. NASA was virtually forgotten as TWM, or the monitor, replaced it in minds of the masses. Why spend billions on a myriad of SETI programs and vast radio telescope networks when photos from space can be tuned in for pennies? We were told. So why go into space when space can now come to you? That was the question. The World Monitor was actually an extremely expensive operation that employed thousands of visible soldiers and personnel that were all in on the big lie to the public. The time wave machine? The time wave machine, the real truth on the 13th underground level beneath the open Fed labs, was only known to a few, Illuminati in Italy, England, and the US, and out of the 16 ways to curve or move through time, utilized by aliens and humans elite, the TWM was the time wave machine, TWM was the most dependable. No glitches in time or wrinkles were produced, and no test subjects were ever lost in the time-traveling missions and expeditions, unlike previous projects of past decades. The truth was, Heitz and Rubinov were given credit for the breakthrough, and like 90% of all other high-tech used on the planet's surface, aliens were the true creators. What was still sold to the public today, in 2015, technology that the military-industrial complex covertly had right after World War II, and always with aid from extraterrestrials, good, bad, or ugly. Now, thousands of extraordinary personnel assigned to the Monitor project were actually part of the lower time wave project, and the skilled humans and non-humans were well aware of the fact. For the last 10 years, time wave had secretly served as a grand galactic learning tool and was utilized or accessed by different life forms and classes or levels of life. Time travel was perfected with the wave machine, which was a collaborative effort by a number of alien groups. The TWM, the real one that drained so much electromagnetic power and the public's money, 13 levels below the surface, was the most stable time conduit within many parsecs of space. Underneath the very public first floor of Brookline Labs stood the actual treasure, or reliable Old Faithful in time travel. Because of the consistency of the wave machine device, its operation for elite usage, personal and scientific, was always booked far in advance, like a fine restaurant. There was only one thing about time travel. A traveler did not alter fixed reality or have the capability to change time for anyone other than him or herself. If an alteration occurred that created a difference or change in the timeline, only the traveler's universe would be affected. In other words, the whole new alternate universe was made, or a very different and individual parallel world. General William J. David did not know this small and awfully important little time fact. He had a good plan in mind. He thought he knew what he must do. Make things right again, he said. The general believed that he understood the correct steps that led to the desired conclusion he wanted, and he was ready this time. A new phase to Brookline's lab first floor was special guided tour for those lucky to have been lottery chosen and given the privilege to visit the formerly exclusive government lab and see, possibly touch, the World Monitor. Colorful families from other states and other countries filed by the huge lobby and flowed into the rear section. Lotto guests were not permitted to venture to the well-guarded upper or lower levels of the federal facility. A pretty lady tour guide told approximately 100 men, women, and children lies directly into their smiling faces. The crowd believed every word and got real excited as they approached the Monitor, which was under heavy military guard. And the guide said, more than 50 years of secret experimentation by many countries produced this miracle of miracles. whereby we can verify without question that the signals are real. The world monitor crystallizes transmissions from deep space into a digital form that we can view over its receptor screen and record the incoming data. Like a radio dish, we can point the TV antenna crystal to any place in space like a telescope and virtually fish for transmissions or frequency energies. The world monitor is not a distant viewer like an optical telescope, but a cosmic television receiver. Scientists have theorized that the old TV screen shows like Gilligan's Islands are viewed by aliens far out in space. With more enhancements to the world monitor, we may be able to view their broadcasted sitcoms. And then the crowd laughed. The general, in his full uniform with full medals, and stood near one of the white walls whose subtle curves would make Frank Lloyd Wright proud. He didn't smile. He was on a very important mission of life and death, and his plan was to again change history, bring back his deceased wife who had died in a car crash 7 years ago, and General David was half completed with what was to him a private and extremely essential mission. Somehow it got insanely fouled up. He was amazed and appalled at the simple tourist crowd that reacted in awe, as if they were the first people into Disneyland or a World's Fair exhibit. And General David thought they didn't question the pictures. They believed all the crap. If it was real, it would not be on public exhibit. Why was it on display at all and allowed to be touched? Did they not question anything and believe everything the media and its minions told them? The sheeple had no clue that they were off-world colonies, as seen in the film Elysium, as well as on other planets light years away. There are super tech cities underneath Earth's surface that are far more elaborate, complex, and ultra-modern than anything on land. None of the surface dwellers, except elites who use it, could imagine the incredibly fast transit system installed with such connected major cities on a global scale, and no one would believe the implausible about true skeletons of ancient giants, prehistoric mega machines, spaceships, and much more within the archives below the Vatican, and none of the billions of sheeple could dream of what only a relatively few completely understood was true, he thought. It all started for General David when he had the rare chance that he thought would never happen, to be alone with a time wave machine. Apparently it was in another universe or time reality way back then when. His job as a general was to be one of the two shift guards that protected the gate entrance and only corridor towards what appeared to be functioning as a time tunnel. On his particular shift he was accompanied by General Blackman, but it was a different general every round. Each highly paid guard never knew when they'd be called to watch the wave machine, and they were always partnered with a general they had never met previously. And in this way the security was almost guaranteed, and each policed the actions of the other with 45 calibers, as if the 13th floor under the Brookline lobby was a nuclear launch site. The generals were never alone to ensure the imperative task that only scheduled users activated the time wave. But on this occasion, General Blackman was unexpectedly called away on an emergency 10 minutes before the end of his guard duty with General David. It was unprecedented. In 15 minutes, a new pair of generals would guard the entrance for the next shift. "I'm sure it would be all right," were the unspoken words. Blackman had to go, and David hid. He was excited to see him go early. Now, there was the opportunity William David waited years for at least. He would have 3 or 4 minutes to operate the time machine, to do absolutely anything he wanted to do with it before the relief pair came. And of course, the facility was filmed and filmed again at every angle, but with all the temporal techs, mathematicians, physicists, aliens, spoiled brats of the royalty secret society and snobs gone, cameras recorded the same static picture. William David knew how to have the same statutory picture repeated on the screens that covered what real activity went on in and around the TWM, the time machine, and it could work. Blackman left. The cameras were fixed on various still life scenes, and David raced to the control panel in front of the gray tunnel, and he inserted basically an electric power absorber which stored and masked the great EM surge accumulated for his trip. And David previously acquired the specs, data, designs, operating instructions of the alien wave machine, every secret from building the tunnel operating the tunnel and maintaining the tunnel were known to the general. He procured wave schematic copies by the same method of the frozen security cameras. He thought he understood the precise settings on the control panel. The machine would slide or thrust or propel him to 2008 and to his wife. William also made certain to set the return timer for 1 minute minimum. That would be enough time to get to the entrance post 50 feet away, possibly. It should work unless the new crew of relief generals arrived early. The engage button was hit after the power vacuum sucked the energy surge, and after the time-place settings were input, he had to remember to grab the energy absorber. After the trip into his past, he took a big breath and crossed his fingers. General David ran into the time tunnel and vanished from 2015. General Will David materialized out of hyperspace behind his house that was located on the side street of Victoria Boulevard in Van Nuys, California. He soon coagulated into a solid form on solid grass in his backyard, as things were during the summer of 2008. This reality was just how it was when he was happy. It seemed like ages ago that the tragedy happened and his sweetest creature in the universe was snuffed out of existence. Maybe he could bring her back. Susan was my entire world at the time, popped out of his mouth. Then, oops, he had no clue of the exact hour. He did not know it was morning on the day of the terrible accident. No one was around him, but any of them could be at any minute, Susan or the other Will David. His full dress uniform in a role as general would certainly throw the couple off, but especially the existence of a little older future Will. The neat jacket and bright medals, not singed in any way by the journey, was flung over his shoulder. He loosened his tie and marched toward his old home in Van Nuys. He knocked on the back door. He sighed. William David, not a general at the time, received just what he expected. When the door opened, there they were, and that, of course, included a few shocking facial expressions. Susan, beautiful Susan, nearly fainted. Younger Will went for his gun. The general shouted, "Please let me explain what this is." Time passed. An extremely awkward situation was made less awkward as tensions eased. Corporal David initially believed he was violently threatened by his new friends, and they sent General David to kill him. He thought the bosses at Hughes Aircraft divulged too much secret into their info into their new recruit, and they sent a clone to replace him on the big project. Such was not the case. The general hardly took his eyes off his living dead wife. Several years ago, he was a lowly corporal that started out on very hush-hush government programs that involved time travel. It was no problem for the younger David to believe he was in the presence of his future self. He and his wife, by coincidence, just saw a TV commercial where the same thing happened, and then came the knock at the back door. William learned a lot from Will, who filled in many blank areas. After the car crash, he was in the process of fast-tracking from corporal to general, all because of his association with the boys at Hughes. At the time project, it was settled, all were in agreement. When young William drives home from the feds today, he would certainly not take Ventura. They said goodbye. The general decided to not shake hands with the corporal. He did caress his gorgeous wife in a very, very long hug. Everything should work, he thought. William David, one of the fastest ever to have made general, was sucked forward in time to his present according to the setting he put, with what were hours in 2008 were only moments in 2015, and he made it. There was almost a minute to spare, plenty of time. William retrieved the power absorber, unfroze the cameras, and returned to his post. And right on time, two generals entered through the sealed door. A new pair of highly paid guards immediately questioned the solitary general without the missing one. When digital data confirmed the reason for Blackman's early departure, the matter was resolved without a report and only a notation. Perfect. General David left the facility via the underground rail system, which was something Buck Rogers would have used. An electric cushion hovered the transport cars inches over the rail and sent passengers over 2,000 miles an hour. Riders only felt a smooth vibration and heard a gentle hum, as vast distances were crossed under the surface in a very short time. He needed to travel to upstate New York to a federal library. His new life had to be examined, and he seemed like a quick way to do it. Here and only here were official records. 2 minutes passed and the man in uniform reached his destination. He was soon behind a computer screen. In fact, it took much longer to make his way past the proper security checks than to arrive at the place by rail. He could look up General David's official bio and see what discrepancies were there. What changed? Did he live at 2303 Bradley Avenue, or did he live somewhere else? But the most important question was, where did they live? No, there it was. He found it, and they lived where he lived. Susan Molly Davis lives. He had a son. There was every indication that William's plan worked. He printed out a hard copy, again went through the reverse security checks, and was unbelievably going home. He went home to his wife and son. But that was the recent past in flashback. In the actual present, the general kissed the sheeple goodbye from a distance at Brookline Labs as they filed out with fantastic stories to tell the amazing World Monitor. William J. David discovered a shocker of his own on his way home. An atomic bomb went off in Will's mind during the rail ride 2303 Bradley Avenue because he examined the printout closer. His enthusiasm when he first saw that his wife was alive blinded him to a bit of information recently added, that he was dead. The other corporal to general had 6 years more with his wife in this timeline than he had in the original one. That was not him. The general from 2015 never experienced those years with Susan and son. Now he discovered in this timeline that he and he alone died in a car crash in 2014. In minutes, the general used his knowledge to get by security walls and found himself at the lower levels of Brookline Labs. He wanted to be caught and tell his story. He wanted to activate the time wave once more. He was desperate. Guards with guns surrounded him, took him away exactly as General William David thought they surely would do. To some, he could have been a double agent or a spy or a ghost back from the dead. To the soldiers and the majors above who watched, they knew who this was without a doubt. He was brought into a gray interrogation room. He told them everything. Mark Bolan, old agent, and Kurt Cobain, not as old, absolutely refused the lower general's request to use the TWM. The agents believed that he believed every word of his story. Their hearts went out to the man who was not of a clear mind. Will David was in tears. He knew this was not the world he had left. These were not the agents that would have met him had he ever worked with them. He was lost, ISO, a perfect off-the-grid who would not even exist in this reality. Why not let him attempt one more time to jump to avoid the 2014 car wreck? Instead, Bolan and Cobain fired his ass. His services as guard general and the wave machine would no longer be required. They also understood that David's mind did not need to be further wiped. It had been messed with enough. What? The former general asked, who obviously did not see the possibility that stood directly in front of him. Cobain told him to go home to your wife and son. The older agent said, and don't come back. Will was blind to an apparent resolution. As he was blind to his post-mortem, he was more than thunderstruck. Could the easiest solution be the right one? She was not the same young Sue, but this one sure looked like his Susan. Never occurred to me. It was magic. It was pure wonder. And he went home. To Susan and to Billy, it was incredible shock. In time, the shock wore off. They lived a happy, long life together. The agents did not tell General William J. David that the guard duty and his entire later life was a phony cover. His story and firm belief that his past and recent actions could have been true and went down exactly as he believed it went down, but the real truth was, Professor William David never had a wife. He was an obsessed physicist, theorist, mathematician, and a brilliant builder of electronics. His perfect time wave machine with alien assistance came to an ultimate price. During the final test that proved the concept, David returned from the prehistoric past and lost his mind. The co-inventor of the TWM was well cared for and given the role of general as well as a simple job as guard. But now David was cared for in a soft room and happily living there with his family. And this is from Trey Caledon on Solask. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support. Please support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.